just get excited when I start to think about the God that we serve. He's not a faraway cosmic force, but he is an intimate, personal God who is with us constantly. And when we call on him, he comes and he answers and he responds to our every cry. I am so thankful for that today. Anybody else thankful this morning? Do we have a house of thankful people this morning? I'm glad to hear that. Good morning, HWC. Good morning to our HWC family and all of those who are in the house and who are watching us online. We are excited that you are here today. And we are 1 week, day 7 of our 21 days of prayer and fasting. How many, okay, let me hear you just shout it out. How many of you have been going through this 21 days of prayer and fasting with us? I can hear you in this house all the way online. So many people have been sharing their experiences. We had some share on social media some of their experiences. And it's exciting because we're starting the year. We're drawing closer to God at the start of this year. As every day we take time to as overall corporately to pray for some very specific things. And you know, another thing that's happening that is so exciting, it's kind of like a byproduct of what's happening in the spiritual realm, is that in the natural, that we're developing some incredible disciplines for a health journey. And so there are two things that are happening at the same time simultaneously, which I'm excited about. As I've talked with people, as they've shared things, they said, spiritually, so many great things are happening, but then that is overflowing, and physically, I just feel good. And so God is working on us and helping us to feel better, to be encouraged and empowered spiritually and physically. And you know, I'm just so excited for this journey, and I can't believe it's already been a whole week, 7 days. We're like a third of the way through. It's been awesome. Give yourselves a great big round of applause for doing so great on these 21 days of prayer and fasting, for taking time to pray every day. I know for some of you, that might be something that's just new that you started. You say, yeah, every day I'm taking time to pray. Good for you. Fantastic. Keep it up. It's awesome. Some have said, this is the first time I've really fasted. And you know, it's been kind of a challenge. Good for you. It's awesome. I'm so excited about it. And you know, as we are starting this year right, we're not only starting this year right, we're starting this whole decade off right with prayer. We're setting ourselves up for better things to come. Now, just turn the person beside you. Say, I'm proud of you. You're setting yourself up for good things. You are setting yourself up for good things. This year, we are making a deliberate choice to put first things first. Somebody say, first things first. That's right. We are getting our priorities in line with God's priorities. And you know that's got to be a good thing. You know, when we're lining up with God's priorities. You know, there are different people that, you know, you might talk to. I talked with a friend last week, and different people maybe at work or like I did, you know, a friend of mine and family members, and they're just telling you know, I'm excited about this year. I believe that good things are going to happen to me this year, and that, you know, I'm going to see some good things, and I'm getting my priorities organized. Lots of people at the beginning of the year, they're like, I'm getting my priorities organized. And, you know, I've heard a couple of people say, you know, I was listening to Tony Robbins, and he was just, you know, telling me how I can experience more success and get things in line, or I was listening to Rachel Hollis, and I was just hearing some really, you know, encouraging things that can just help me to prioritize my life and my business. And, you know, that's good. But then when they turn to you, you know, you're talking to somebody and they turn to you and they say, who are you listening to this year that you can follow, that are trying to get your priorities right? And, you know, I got to say, it feels good to say the answer, God. Yeah, God. Who are you? I'm listening to God. Yeah, who's organizing my priorities this year? God. Drop the mic. Because you can compare all your motivational speakers, but if you're going to talk to God, you're spending time to get God, your priorities right with God. That's it. That's the ultimate. He is the one. He knows the beginning from the end. He knows your future from your past. He knows what is ahead of you. He knows the things that are in store for you. He's got great plans for you. And so if you're going to listen to somebody this year, set yourself up at the start of the year to listen to God. And get your priorities lined up with him. Now, I gotta say, that it's okay to listen to those other people. You can learn some good things, you can get some nuggets from them, but listening to God, you can't top that. You can't top that. Everything God says to you will impact your life. Everything God says will lead your life, will cause you to succeed, will cause you to be who God has designed you to be. And so this year, we want to say my priorities, I want my priorities to be God's priorities. God, I want to line up my priorities with your priorities, with what you have for me this year. This year, my focus is what do you have for my life? What is it that you want for my life? I want you to direct it. And so this morning, as we put first things first, we want to take a few moments to talk about the heart of it all. What's at the heart of it all as we put first things first? What is at the heart of it all as we put first things first? To experience success this year, to be empowered this year, we need to know, God, what's at the heart of it? What's the main thing? What is it that we need to do first? And do you know that Jesus was actually asked this question? The Bible tells us that in the New Testament, in the book of Matthew, and it's recounted again in the book of Mark, and it tells us that Jesus was asked this question by some people. He was actually asked the question by some religious people. They were really looking more for like a religious answer, like do's and don'ts and wills and won'ts, and let's get into some kind of religious debate. But I love Jesus. Jesus is awesome. Like, really, beyond what Jesus has done for me. When I read the Bible and I just see how Jesus always responds with things, and he takes everything always way beyond what our natural mind expects. Right? What our natural thing expects. He always goes above and beyond. And so, he was asked the question, what's the most important commandment? What's the first? If we're going to put first things first in 2020, then what's the first and most important commandment? What's the first thing that God wants us to do? What is it? And so Jesus, he answers the question, but as he always did, he gave an unexpected answer. So I want to read to you from Matthew chapter 22, just a few verses starting at verse 37. It said, Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment." What should I do? What's the first? What's the best? This is the first and greatest commandment. But then he continues and he says, and second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. Everything else that God tells us to do, everything else that the Bible lays out, what the prophets have told you, everything else, it just rests on this. Here it is. All the law, all the instructions of the Bible can be narrowed down to love God and love others. Love God and love others. These commandments are literally the heartbeat of everything in our life. They are at the heart of it all. Literally, it's the heartbeat. See, the very first sign of life, we're talking about first things, the very first sign of life that doctors usually give to a parent is the child's heartbeat. I listen to the heartbeat. There's an excitement because the heart is beating. Life is happening. Life is developing because there's a heartbeat. And so the very first sign. See, our body has all kinds of vital organs. The kidneys, the lungs, the bladder, the liver. All of these vital organs, they're important. They're important for the functioning of our body. We want to take care of them physically. They're all good. But if the heart stops beating, then everything else is affected. If the heart stops beating, then everything else is just going to shut down. It's just not going to work any longer. If the heart stops beating, life is over. When there's no heartbeat, there's no life. And so really what Jesus is saying is all of the other commandments and the things that are in the Bible, it's not that they're not important. It's not that we should ignore everything else that the Bible says. Otherwise, God wouldn't have given it to us. They're important. They're effective for our life. But if the heartbeat isn't working, if the heartbeat isn't there, if it's not functioning, then those other things, we're going to struggle. It's going to be a challenge. But so he said, here it is, the heartbeat of it all is to love God first and equally as important to love others. This is where we start this year. This is our priority. Turn the person beside you and say, my priority is love God and love others. These two things are literally the heartbeat. They're the guiding principle for our lives. And you know, sometimes you meet people and they're struggling to figure out Christianity. They're struggling to figure out what it means and what you have to do and what you have to give up. Has anybody ever talked to somebody and they're like, I'm trying to figure out what am I going to have to give up if I become a Christian? What am I going to have to do? How am I going to have to change my life? And you know, they're struggling with all of those other things, trying to figure them all out. And Jesus said, let's just bring it down to the heartbeat first. Just love God and love others. Love God first with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love others. And then all that other stuff, well, that will all get sorted out because we got the heartbeat going. Those things will grow. They'll mature just like a baby. Those things, once the heartbeat is there and it's pushing the blood, then everything else begins to develop in a healthy way as long as the heart keeps beating and the blood keeps flowing. And so keep the heartbeat of it all. Love God first and love others. Jesus gave us this order. He said, love God. Here it is. The first and most important, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God. So here's always the most difficult question. Do you want to know the most difficult question? Do you really want to know the most difficult question? Always the most difficult question. How? How? You know, it's good to know the what, but then we need to know the how. How am I going to do this? How do I love God? How am I supposed to love others? How do I do it fully? So how do I love God fully? The Bible breaks it down like this. I love it because Jesus said, here's what it is. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Somebody say, with all my heart. So in this verse, it's not talking about the physical heart, but it's talking about the will of an individual. Love God with my will, with my choice. Love God with all my heart. And then he says, love God with all your soul. Somebody say, my soul. The soul means your desire or your feelings. Notice this, that he says, love God with all your heart, with your will, and then love God with all your soul, with all your feelings. Notice that your will comes before your feelings. Your choice comes before your emotions. You know, too many times we are being led by our emotion. Well, I'm not feeling it. Well, I don't feel it anymore. I don't feel like that. I don't feel like, and we want to lead our life. Well, I'm not doing it because I don't feel it. And we want to do everything because we feel it or we don't feel it. I don't feel like going to work today. Well, that's okay because your boss doesn't feel like giving you a paycheck for doing diddly. It's not about how I feel. It's about the choice. And so feeling follows choice. Too many times we get so emotional and we get so wishy-washy and we wonder what's going on with our society because we're doing the other way around. We're letting our choice follow our feelings. And the problem with feelings is that they're like cats, they're fickle. You got a lot of fickle feelings. So there's the heart, there's the soul, and there's the mind. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, your way of thinking. Love him with your way of thinking. So we love God this way. This is what Jesus was saying. He said, here's how we're going to love God fully. Love God with your heart by making a decision that develops desire, causing us to be deliberate. Make a decision that develops desire, that causes us to be deliberate in the way that we live. That's how we break it down to love God. Not just by how we feel. Desire, healthy desire will often follow decisions. So I'm going to just kind of take us off course just for a minute, but I'm bringing you back to where sometimes we desire things that are not good for us. And sometimes we don't desire things that are good for us. And so that's where it's important to be led not by our desires, but to have a determination, or by our will, or by our choices. So let me tell you about this love-hate relationship that I have with exercise. Some of you have hate-hate relationship. Some of you have a love-love relationship. But I have this love-hate relationship with exercise. So I really love the results of exercise. I love the feeling of exercise. I love when I exercise like enough times and I do the right exercise and I can bug my daughters and say, yeah, just feel this muscle. Yeah, I got muscle. Just feel this. Yes, I do it. My daughter's like, yeah, she does that. I'm like, feel this. I like that. But I really kind of hate the getting up, changing into the clothes that you gotta wear, going out, putting the effort, sweating, breathing heavy, feeling sometimes like you're gonna... Okay, you are all in shape, right? So none of you do that. But when I get out and I exercise, and I'm running outside in the cold, and I'm like stopping going... I sound like Darth Vader. And if you've never sounded like Darth Vader, either A, you're in really good shape, or B, you don't go out running in the cold. But here's the thing that I have discovered. Whether it's, running or another form of exercise, the more that I choose to do it consistently, then when I haven't done it, I desire it. I'm like, oh man, I just don't feel right because it creates desire in me. The decision creates a desire. So let's bring this down then to our love for God. When we love God, how do we love? First thing, everything starts with a decision, including our relationship with God. Love is not an emotion or a feeling. Let me help you today. Love for God, love for others, love for your significant other, your spouse, your children. It's not a feeling. Feelings are fickle. Feelings come and go. Feelings are like cats. They're cuddly sometimes and annoying other times. Everything starts with a decision, including our relationship with God. Love is not an emotion. It's an action initiated by a choice or a decision. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with your will, with your decision, with your decider. Decide to love God. And so in North American context, we get this word love. See, we hear the word love in the Bible and we misunderstand or misinterpret because in the Bible, the English language translates like 6 different words into one word, love. So there's all these different words really that in the original language, but we just say love. I love pizza. I love my dog. I love my husband. Hopefully I don't love them all the same. Yes. Okay, so I don't have a dog, so don't worry about that. Love is an action, and it's initiated by choice. And see, we have a problem because we put in the context of loving, and we get it all messed up because we boil it down to an emotional response or an emotional feeling. If everything feels good, if everything's going my way, if I like what the other person is doing, if how they're treating me, then that's love. So love is driven by what I feel. But if any of these things are not happening, if it's not going my way, if I don't like how they're treating me, if I disagree with their decision, then I just don't love them anymore. I fell out of love. Anybody ever heard that term somewhere, on a movie or something? They fell out of love. That is ridiculous. Because really understanding what love is, you can't fall into a choice. You can't fall out of a choice. You choose no longer to love them. Oh, it's too inconvenient. It's not satisfying me and my wants and my desires and my feelings anymore. And so I'm just choosing not to. And they just want to make an excuse. I just fell out. No, you didn't fall out. You don't fall out of love like you fall out of a tree. You make a choice. And so this is the problem that we have. We're really messed up in our society because we base love on these feelings, these emotions. If everything is going my way, people break up or get divorced, they walk out, they move on because I'm not feeling it. But love is really not about feeling it. It's about choosing it. It's about choosing. It's about making a choice. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with your choice, with your decision, with your will. And so it's not always about how I feel. And that's why love really can't be a feeling, because feelings come and go 10 times a day. When you leave the house in the morning and you give your spouse a kiss, you feel warm and fuzzy, and that's a wonderful feeling. Then when they call you and they tell you, oh, you know what, I forgot the keys to the car and I need you to come back, and you're like already 20 minutes late and you need to go back, and then you're not feeling it anymore. You're not feeling warm and fuzzy. Oh, my sweetheart. You're feeling like you are annoying me. You're going to be late for work. Now I got to... Oh, it doesn't happen to any of the rest of you. No, you're all warm and fuzzy all the time. Like the other day, I was going to get Chantal, and she said, oh, I needed this, this, and this, and I was on a time frame, and I said, okay, no problem, and oh, thank you, Mommy, I love you, oh, and I love her, and it's so sweet, and I'm thinking, oh, my kid's, she's just so great, and then and she calls me, and she's like, did you remember my backpack? No, where was it was under the chair. Under the chair. I'm supposed to remember a backpack under the chair. I'm supposed to see a backpack under the chair. And then my great daughter, who was so awesome, who was just like, then I'm just like, really? Really? So are you kidding me? I really have to go all the way back. In the traffic. Yes, I really have to go. Yes. Then I wasn't feeling it anymore. And then you have to choose. I choose to love my kid. I'm glad my kid has her books in her backpack and she's going to study. Okay, I choose, even though I got to fight this ridiculous traffic now. And anyways, love is based on choices. And they're choices that we need to make habitually. There are choices that we need to make habitually. Every day. Things that we do every day. Loving God isn't just an emotion that gets stirred up at church or when I hear a certain song and now I just love God because this song just moves me. It moves my emotion. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good to feel those emotions because relationship without emotion, that would be messed up too. Right? If you had a relationship with somebody, but there was no emotions attached to it or involved in it, then that would be, not a healthy relationship either. And so there should be emotions. And so it is good when we come and we're in God's presence and we feel good. And when we're listening to a song and we feel good. But if we only run on the moments that we feel good, then again, our love for God, just like our love for those around us, that's going to wane and not be solid and be able to get us through difficult days and challenging times, because it's based on the feelings and not on our choices. So loving God is developed with habitual choice. Let me read to you from Genesis chapter 17, verse 1. I love this. I love this because this is so practical. God said to Abraham, so this is God talking. Turn the person beside you, say, this is God talking. It's good for us to listen when God is talking. God said to Abraham, and this is from the Amplified Version, but I just love the way it says, God says to Abraham, walk habitually before me with integrity, knowing that you are always in my presence, and be blameless and complete in obedience to me. Wow. Okay, this is loving God because he's walking in purity and in obedience to him. But how is he living that way? How is he blameless? How is he complete? How is he living in a way that is honoring God day to day? It says, walk habitually before me. See, God said to Abraham to be habitual in your actions. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of habit. If you stop to think about it, there are certain habits that you don't think about it because you are a creature of habit. But if you stop, usually most people, they put on their pants the same leg every time. Why? Because you're a creature of habit. I don't know why. There are certain things we do the same way every day. The way you brush your teeth. It's a habit. Or probably somebody taught you at a young age, how many times you're supposed to brush each side, each molar, the way that we do things, we're creatures of habit. And we develop these habits as we choose to do them. We develop these habits, and now these habits begin to drive our life. So habitually means customarily or in the usual manner of behavior. Your life is shaped by the small things you do every day. Your habits, how you live habitually. Our lives are shaped by the small things we do every day. So you know what you truly value by what you spend your time doing. And the habits you develop determine your lifestyle. The habits that we develop, the small things that we do every day, becoming habits, are the things that determine the direction of our life, the course of our life, and the lifestyle that we live. So here's a really good question. How are we habitually loving God? See, this is just bringing it right down to practice. We bring it, God, Jesus gives that high level. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. Love the Lord your God with your will, with your desire, and with your determination. Love the Lord with all of those things. But here it is. How do we break it down? God said to Abraham, walk habitually with me. Create a habit, a lifestyle that says, God, I love you. Not just occasionally or sometimes or when I have a problem or when I feel a really cool song, but God, every day, all the time. And I love, so why is it that I love? I'm so encouraged and inspired by this 21 days of prayer and fasting. Because we are literally developing habits that are loving God. We're developing a habit of loving God. If you do something for 21 days in a row, you begin to develop a habit. So the habit, 21 days, it's fantastic. When we have, at Easter time, we often do 7 days of fasting. When we do a week of fasting, it's awesome when we do those things. It's amazing. We're setting aside, we're saying, I'm not going to, just give my flesh whatever it wants, but I'm going to give my spirit what it needs and let my flesh kind of just suffer for a bit so that my spirit is being built up. I love when we do that. But it's amazing because as we've taken on this 21 days, for many of us, we are creating some new habits of loving God. Tell the person beside you, say, we're creating a habit of loving God. I am excited about this. I love it. The steps that we do every day, we're saying every day I'm praying. Every day I'm focusing on praying for something specific. Every day I'm reading the scripture. Every day I'm going to the app and saying, okay, I'm going to read my devotion. Because, here it is. And this is one thing I love about this. And how many are enjoying the videos every day? Just those short prayer. Awesome. It's just been a lot of fun. It's amazing. Even this morning, first thing when I woke up, before I was getting ready, the first thing I did was go to my devotion, and I saw the video. I was just encouraged, and we were challenged this morning. If some of you, you were rushing, you were getting to church on time. Good for you. And so maybe you haven't seen it, but I was encouraged. We had, one of Darius, one of our young men. He's in there and pray for the family of God. Pray for your family at HWC. I took time to pray for you guys today. It's awesome. We're developing the habit of loving God. How do you love the Lord your God fully? It comes down to very practical. It's not about mushy feelings. It's about solid choices for life that will move you forward, that will advance you in every area of your life. Let me tell you something. You are working at advancing yourself forward in every area of your life as you put first things first, as you put loving God first. We are moving forward. Turn the person beside you, say, we're moving forward together. We're moving forward together. We're habitually loving God. Many of us started on Monday with this developing a habit of fasting and praying. So we develop, how do we love the Lord our God with all our heart, our soul, and our mind? How do we make a decision that will perpetuate a desire? See, I'm going to just tell you, the more that we are doing this, every day taking time to pray, every day reading, you're developing a desire. If you stop doing it one day, after doing it for 21 days, you're going to feel like this hole in your day. Like, oh, something's missing. What didn't I do today? Because my decision developed desire that caused me to be deliberate in my love for God. I just love this. And so our daily habit of praying and reading the Word, this is how we love the Lord our God. I love it. We create this daily habit of praying and reading the Bible. I love the Word of God because it contains encouragement, wisdom, comfort, inspiration, answers to every conceivable problem that you might have is found in the Bible. If you're looking for answers anywhere else, let me encourage you, first go to the Bible. First go to the Bible. I love it because it's in there. In fact, last week I had a brief conversation with Sheila, and we were talking, about a few things and one particular dilemma. And so I said, I'm going to share something that I found. And when I went and looked it up and was looking for, specifically what it was a Christian author, and it was based on the Bible. Answers to natural problems in life based on the Bible, because it's all there. And so as we develop a daily habit, we are not only loving God more, but we are growing in every area of our life. We develop a weekly habit of coming to church. You say, why is it such a big deal? Because it causes us to love God more. It's part of the habits, the habitually walking with God. It's being like Abraham and God saying, you know what? Walk habitually with me. And then you're going to overcome some of the other things that you have in your life. We think we have challenges, we have difficulties, we have things that we're going through, and we wonder, well, how come I can't seem to overcome? But when you create the habit and you're drawing closer to God, it's amazing because more and more you see God at work in your life. You see him changing things. You see good things coming your way. You see bad things leaving your life. And you say, God, this is because I am habitually walking with you. You're changing my character. You're changing the way I live. You're changing the way I act because I love you. Sometimes we're so caught up in let's do all of those things first and then see if God's going to love me. No, God said, you know what? Love me. Create these habits, these daily simple steps that will change your life. Pray and read the Bible daily. Attend church weekly. Make it a habit. I'm so glad that you made it a habit. I'm so glad you're here today. Keep on making it a habit. Smile at the person beside you. Say, coming to church is a good habit to have. Sunday is the best day of the week. Sunday is the best day of the week. Why? Because I get to be here with you, because we get to be here together, because we get to lift up God, and we get to develop a habit that will cause us to love God more. It causes us to love God more. A regular habit of serving God. I was talking to a few of our leaders this morning. I was just saying, I'm just so thankful that we have the opportunity. It's a privilege and an incredible opportunity to serve God. And as we serve him, the more you serve him, the more you love him, the more you appreciate who he is. There's just something when we create a regular habit of getting involved. So let me challenge you or encourage you this morning. If you say, well, I don't know where I can serve, or I'm not sure how I can get involved in serving God. You know what? Come right after service, see the Connect corner and say, hey, I want to start getting connected. I want to get engaged. I want to create a habit of serving God, because as I serve God, it grows my love for God. It really does. These are things that are literally what the Bible says is walking habitually with God and causing our lives to be changed and transformed. It's developing that love for God. Jesus said to his disciples that loving God really is about action. Jesus said, if you love me, you'll obey my commandments. It really just comes down, it's action. Love is choice. It's choosing to do something, and it's developing the habit. It's an action. We can't say we love God and ignore his commandments. So love is walked out in how we live. Loving God is developing habits that will cause us to live for him. This is, to me, I like practical. I don't know about you, but I like to just know, how am I supposed to do it? This is how I do it. Develop these habits. Loving God with all your heart is about making a decision. We have decided to follow Jesus. You know, I love the old, those, you know, Brother Ricardo, you know, my parents, my grandparents, they used to sing, I think we sing like a redone version of that song, but we just do sing, I've decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. I've made a decision. That is a difference between the previous generation and our generation. Our generation and the ones younger, it's all about the emotion. But the previous day was just, let's make a decision. Let's stick with that decision. Let's run with that decision. Let's move forward. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. Not emotional choice, but an absolute determination in my spirit, in my heart. I have decided to follow Jesus. You ever notice, you know, when you read the Bible, I like to read the Bible, but really read the Bible. And when the disciples decided to follow Jesus, and we all have different experiences. And some of us have more very emotional experiences of when we made that decision. And it's okay because there's emotion involved in love. The two things go together, decision and emotion, they go together. But you know what? When I look at the Bible and I see how Jesus went, and he was just like, you know, with his disciples, there was no like praise team following Jesus. He did not have a portable keyboard or accordion. He didn't have any music. He didn't have an altar call. Just as I am without, no, he was just like, yo, dude, I see you're busy here, but hey, you want to follow me? And hey, you want to follow me? Yeah, come and follow me. I got good things going on. I'm doing great things. God, I'm here to change the world. I'm here to just follow me. There was just a decision. There was just a decision. There was no emotional plea. There was no begging. There was no altar call. There was no music. There was no worship leader saying, I want you to just lift your head. He's just like, do it or don't. Stay or go. Just decide. I have decided. But I love it because when they decided, then there were so many incredible things that happened and that went on. And then that's where the emotion kicked in because they're like, wait a second, this Jesus guy, he's awesome. He became their friend. They loved him. They gave their life for him. There was such a deep, connection. And that's what it is when I come and I've decided to follow Jesus. Make the decision to follow Jesus. When we talk with people, we're trying to make it too complicated. Just decide. Decide to follow Jesus. Decide to love him. Decide to make the habits of reading the Bible and coming to church. And as you do, you begin to love them more and more. I decided 30 some odd years ago to get married. And in deciding to get married, did I have feelings? Absolutely. Yes, good feelings, emotion. But those feelings have matured and deepened and grown over the years. So over 30 some odd years, because the feelings that I had, I laugh at sometimes, or maybe muse sometimes when people say, we've been married 10 years. It's just like our honeymoon. And I think, I really feel sorry for you because if you haven't matured beyond your honeymoon, then, your relationship is still kind of shallow. Because a relationship, you make the decision, but then the emotional aspect, the desire, the love, it deepens. It goes deeper so that when the storms come, when the challenges come, you can say, yes, we're like, stuck together. Things are going because it's deepened. It's going beyond just a feeling. I made this choice, but now there's a deliberation in it. And it's powerful. And so when we decide to serve God with our whole heart, we habitually serve him, then we grow in this love. And we are doing exactly what the heartbeat of God is. It becomes the number one thing. Yes, I love God with all my heart. I love the Lord my God. When you decide to serve him with your whole heart, make him first in your life, it's incredible because this peace that he gives us, even in storms, this joy that will hold, an anchor that will hold us, it's amazing to see God at work in our lives. I love God. Turn to the person beside you, say, we got to love God habitually. Make it habitual actions. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and your soul and your mind, deliberately. But then Jesus didn't finish there. So give me just a couple more minutes. Jesus didn't finish there. He said the first and greatest commandment, this is the first and greatest commandment. And then Jesus said, a second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. A second is equally as important. Love your neighbor as yourself. Equally as important. I'm like, God, what does that actually mean? Does it actually mean like equally? So I looked it up and it says equivalent, holding the same value. Whoa. Loving God is just as important then that we love our neighbor. We have a friend and he is a really, really nice guy. Actually, Pastor Kevin, I don't even know how they first met, but anyway, he and Pastor Kevin became friends and then I was introduced and he is a really nice guy, a very funny guy. Very funny. He could have been a stand-up comedian. In fact, I think for a little short time, he did do stand-up comedy. Just a really fun guy, a really enjoyable person to be with. And there was a season in his life when he went through some very difficult circumstances. He was really hurt by, some individuals and some of the people, they were Christians, but what went down, he was really hurt. And so we got together with him just to encourage him and just, kind of see where we were concerned. We were concerned for him, where he was and how he was doing spiritually. And so I remember meeting with him, we were talking to him, and he's like, "Oh, guys, don't worry about me. I still love God. I just don't really like people very much." And we were like, "Okay, well, this is good that you love God. We got to work on the people part." Because Jesus said it's equally as important that we love people. And so here's the challenge for every single one of us. Because you're listening to that and you're going, "Yeah, I maybe have felt like that a time or two." See, when we make this a priority, it's the heartbeat to love God. When we love God, then I love God so much. The great thing about loving God is that one party in that relationship is perfect. And it's not you. And it's not me. The challenge in loving people is that it's two imperfect, flawed parties that are trying to build relationship with each other. But we still have to work out loving people. This is the challenge. When we make God's priorities our priorities, we have to love God and we have to love people. And if we only love God, then it's like a heart with blocked arteries. See, we said that the first commandments is the heartbeat. It's the heartbeat of but if we only love God, then we have the heart. It might still be beating, but there's a whole bunch of blocked arteries. If we don't love people, your heart can still be beating, but you have too many. If you're saying, "You know what, I'm holding on to too many offenses. I don't really care this much about those people. I have issues with that person." If you have too many blocked arteries, eventually you will get a heart attack. And it will try to take you out. It will cause your system to stop functioning or working the way it goes. And so Jesus said these two things together. The heart has two chambers. Is that correct? Two chambers? And so if one chamber is working, I'm loving God, but then the other one is not working, I don't love God, I don't love people. Heart attack. That's a challenge. That's a problem. And so we need to love God and make a habitual action to love God, but equally as important, Jesus said, upholding the same value. Equally as important, we have to love our neighbors and we have to love others. Equally as important, maybe a little more challenging. I love it because, Jesus kind of eased us into it. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Yes, I'm going to choose to love God. Yes, my desire is going to be for God. Yes, but equally as important, love your neighbor. You mean like my annoying neighbor who lets their dog bark in the hallway? Love your neighbor. We have to equally love our neighbor. So when we love others, we come back to the all-important question, how? How do I do this? Sometimes it's really easy. I was thinking about it and I thought, there are kind of like if you kind of just break it into two categories, like real base categories, there's two kinds of neighbors. Can I tell you about two kinds of neighbors? There's silky neighbors. Silky, material just feels silky. And so, when you kind of you're like, "Oh, that feels nice," right? So you have silky neighbors who when you meet them and you're in, relationship with them and you talk with them, they're just so encouraging and always smiling and they're just saying the nice, and they're like silky neighbors. They just feel good. You just feel good when you're around them. And, does anybody know people like that? You just turn the person beside you, say, you're like that. I feel good when I'm around you. And then there's the other kind of neighbors. I just thought about this. And then there are none in this room, so, you don't have to worry about it. There are sandpaper neighbors. You know what I mean? Like, they're sandpaper neighbors. They're like, yeah, you just, they rub you the wrong, yeah. I don't know about you, but even sometimes like the sound of sandpaper just rubbing, it's just like, and some people that you get around, and they're just not the feel good people. Some, they complain, or they don't like the way you do things, or they, all of these, and so I kind of broke it down in my mind. I'm like, it's easy to love the silky neighbors, but it's more difficult to love the sandpaper neighbors. But if you're building something, what kind of neighbor is actually more useful? I'm just throwing it out there. If we're building something, sandpaper will work on the rough edges to make them smooth. So sometimes we have sandpaper neighbors, and they just feel like they're always grating on us, but we have to look at it and say, Lord, I'm just going to thank you for the sandpaper neighbors, because they're just working on my rough edges and helping to smooth them out. They're helping me to be more patient. They're helping me to be more caring. They're helping me to say, you know what, I got to look past, because maybe whatever's going on with them. The sandpaper neighbors are actually helping you even when we feel like they're hurting us. Love your neighbor, Jesus said, the silky ones and the sandpaper ones. Loving our neighbors. So how do we love people? Let's review the fundamentals. Love is not a feeling, but it's driven by choice. So it's not how I feel, but it's driven by a choice of what I'm going to do. Love is not emotion, love is action. It's about what I'm going to do. I have to choose to express love when it's easy and when it's not easy. When people are silky and when people are sandpaper. And you know what? I think it was the Holy Spirit just encouraging me, because, sometimes you want to avoid the sandpaper people. But I think, for me, and, maybe not you, maybe, you have more, whatever might be more, you are already more refined than me. But for me, I'm like, Holy Spirit, thank you for reminding me that the sandpaper people are working on my character, that I'm smoothing out some rough edges, that I'm having to, I've just been, honestly, in this year, I'm like, Lord, I'm going to choose to let some rough edges be smoothed out. I'm going to choose to let that happen in my life. And it's a good choice. And then, when you're really in them, you just have to remind yourself. And sometimes you just respond in a way. And yeah, I'm just like, I'm proud of myself. That was good. I responded well. Okay, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Just help me to keep going forward. In Romans 12, verses 9 and 10, it says this: don't just pretend to love people. Don't be fake or phony, hypocritical, but really love them. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. And so this loving is not like an intimate, but it's a friendship, it's a kindness, it's an honoring. Honoring one another means preferring them or placing them first before yourself. Think about somebody else. We have to see others as being more important than ourselves. I love this, because when Jesus was setting up these priorities, he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and the second is equally important, love your neighbor as yourself. Love God, love your neighbor. He made those the priority thing. He didn't even make loving yourself the priority thing. He said that's something that, we already think a lot of ourselves. We all do. And so love your neighbor. And so how do we practically show genuine love to our neighbor? Here's just a few practical things, and then I'm going to wrap up this morning. A few practical things. Notice them. Pay attention. Pay attention to someone. Pay attention to why they might be in a good mood or in a bad mood. Pay attention to what's going on with them. Maybe they had a rough day. Maybe they're going through a difficult time at work. Maybe there's a reason why they're sandpapery. Sometimes we just need to notice. And, when somebody's sandpapery to us, let's try to be silky to them. Let's try to be. Turn it around and just say, okay, I'm going to work on that. It's not easy. It's definitely a difficult thing to do. But noticing, really genuinely noticing people, it's something that we don't do a lot. We're so busy and we're always on the go. And I'm guilty. Maybe let me talk for me. I am always focused to go, focused to do something, focused to, I'm just that kind of, and sometimes we don't really notice. And we have to just, wait a second, I got to check myself, because being focused on what I have to do, where I have to go, that is not putting others before myself. It's putting my agenda and my responsibilities and my concerns and my desire, it's really putting that first. And so it's really noticing people. It's being polite. Can I just break this down, to really genuine? I'm just going to be super transparent this morning. When I am out driving at the store, I'm driving on the road, or I'm at the store and I'm in a hurry, and a lot of times I am, because I don't know, I'm just like that. I just want to go do things and get. I really have to work on being polite. I do. I have. It's effort for me. You see me here and you're thinking, no. Just make me feel good. Just. Yes, when I'm driving, I'm just why are you trying to cut in front of me? Why are you trying? And recently, the Lord has really been helping me, and just I think a lot of sandpaper people have been coming in my life, because the Lord has been reminding me that I need to get some of those edges refined. And so I just started saying, what? How do I just in practical everyday ways, love other people? Practical everyday ways. And so I was okay, you know what? I got to just start noticing people more, slowing down, preferring others first, not getting mad. Okay, you know what? That person drove up this side and they're trying to cut in knowing that this lane ends. But you know what? I'm just going to... Okay, does that irritate anybody else? Does it anybody? Okay, all right, thank you. I don't feel so bad. Don't feel like such a horrible person. But I just been okay, you know what? No, I'm just gonna let them in without yelling at them. Occasionally I do, and Chantal will be in the car and she's like, Mom, they can't hear you. No, but it just makes me feel better. But I'm pretty sure it's not the attitude that God wants me to have. So, or even in the store, just looking around and saying, you know what? If you have and only have 2 items and I have 30, go ahead, right? Just trying to stop and and even that person who cuts their buggy of 45 items in front of you, standing with 4 items. I just... Sandpaper people. I've really been checking myself. Really, I mean it. I genuinely mean it. I told you I was going to just get really real for a minute, because a little while ago, I would have been yo, hello. I've been standing here for 15 minutes. You're not just bringing that cart in here and thinking that you're going to go just put it. No, not happening. I know it's bad, right? Confession is good for the soul, they say. Confess your sins one to another. I'm on a roll of confessing this morning. Lord, forgive me. But honestly, I've just been saying, I have to notice more and I have to prefer people. These are practical ways because it's so easy to prefer someone if you have, if you have a certain relationship with them, if they're a friend or if they're, your spouse and you just, you really love them, so you prefer them. But really the people who are like sandpaper in your life, that's really when you say, no, I'm really developing loving my neighbor, preferring somebody, watching out, paying attention, saying, I'm just going to put others before myself in practical ways and making this a habit in my life. A habit to slow down, a habit to literally say, how do I put others before myself? How do I look genuinely at the needs of others and take time for them? How do we create this? How are we loving others? Let me just give you one more ouch because, I already gave you a couple ouches. Forgiving people. Somebody just say ouch. Let's just be honest, because sometimes it's really challenging to forgive when somebody has been rubbing the wrong way, they have been, right? And it's a difficult one. And it's more difficult in some situations than others, where whatever has been said or done to you has been more hurtful, has hurt you in a deeper way, has impacted your life in a more, in a bigger way, then that's more difficult to walk in forgiveness. But when Jesus said, love the Lord your God, and then the second one is just as important, love your neighbor as yourself, what are habits that we get into that go against that? Some habits that we get into are about thinking about myself, being so busy that I need to do, and just holding on to grudges and unforgiveness. And so we have to say, I got to set aside my agenda all the time, and I have to set aside how I feel about a situation. Say, Lord, help me to walk in forgiveness in this situation. And just choose to say, I'm letting that thing go and I'm releasing it. And saying, because you can't truly say you love someone that you're holding on to bitterness and anger toward them. If we say, you know what, I love, but I'm going to hold on to anger, and I'm just going to be angry every time I think about it, every time I talk about it, every time I'm just going to have anger boil over, then really we're not walking in forgiveness. And that we're not loving the way that Jesus said it's equally as important. It comes back to, it's much more difficult to love imperfect people than a perfect God. But it's just equally as important. And so we have to consider our actions and how they'll impact others. I want to just close with an incredible true story that I read this week about just loving others and how can we practically in our life just say, I'm going to love others. I'm not talking about just, a friend or a close, because sometimes we boil it down to I'm loving people because I'm loving a friend who, in fact, the Bible says this. It says, really, how good are you if you love the people who are good to you? What good? Anybody can do that. Even somebody who doesn't follow Jesus, they do that. But it's loving the people that are the sandpaper people, that are difficult to love, or that are different from you, or that don't do things the way that you do them, or that don't see things the way that you see them. And so I read this powerful story this week, really about loving others and putting others before our own interests. And I want to share it with you because it really impacted me, and my desire is that it would impact you too. An incredible, true story about a junior high boy with a learning disability. And I think maybe, it hit home because many of you know my nephew when he was younger had a learning disability, went through some real difficulties and challenges, and we're so proud of him. He's done so incredibly in his life. He's now working for the fire department in the city that he lives in, and God has just opened door. They created a special position just for him, and it is amazing. And we're just so proud of him. But, it's been a struggle and a challenge. And so I think if you know somebody or, you have family or friends who have a disability, then you understand that sometimes it's not an easy thing to deal with. And so I read this story about this young boy in junior high, and he had a learning disability. His name was Shay. And he didn't fit in well because of his disability. He struggled understanding things the way that other kids understood them. He's what we would refer today as being like on the autism spectrum. And so one day, Shay and his father were walking past a park and where the boys were playing baseball. So there were two teams, and he knew these boys that were playing baseball. And so he said to his dad, "Do you think they would let me play?" And his father, knowing that the boys probably wouldn't want him on their team, any of the boys, but at the same time understanding that if his son could just be allowed to play, it would make him feel like he fit in for once, like he belonged, like he wasn't always just on the outside. So Shay's father decided, he said, I'll ask, I'll see what they say. If they say no, that's okay, the game's already started. Tried to ease it, his son, prepare him for a negative response. And so, but he went to one of the boys on the field and he said, do you think my son could play? And the boy looked at him, and they recognized him from the neighborhood. They knew he had a disability and that he certainly wouldn't be an asset to their team. And so he looked around to a couple of his teammates, and they were all kind of like, I don't know. But this boy just decided, he responded, and he said, you know what, we're losing by 6 runs. The game's in the 8th inning. I guess he can be on our team. And I'll try to put him up to bat at the 9th inning. The guy's like, we're losing anyways. So, yeah, okay, let's put him on the team. But in the bottom of the 8th inning, his team scored a few runs, and they were behind by 3. So at the top of the 9th inning, so if you know anything about baseball, they were behind by 3, but if they got 3 more runs, then they would win. So at the top of the 9th inning, the next inning, Shay put on a glove, and he played. They put him in the outfield, and no hits came his way, but he was just so ecstatic that these boys had let him play, and there he was in the outfield with the, and he was really doing nothing but holding a glove, but he was part of the team, and it made him, feel really good. And no hits came his way, and he was just grinning. He was waving to his dad from the sideline. Look at me, I'm out here in the outfield, And then in the bottom of the 9th inning, his team scored again. So now with 2 outs and the bases loaded, that meant that whoever was up to bat, this would make the game. Potentially winning the game. It was his turn to be at bat. And the father, he felt kind of some disappointment. He felt his stomach sort of just fall, and he said he knew that the boys wouldn't actually let his son go to bat. There's no way that, this is a competitive game. They wanted to win. They're competitive. There's no way he was going to let him. So he's like, I'll just be prepared to just encourage him that he got to stand in the outfield. And to his complete and utter surprise, the boy who brought him into the game passed him the bat. And everyone, both teams, knew that it was impossible. He didn't even know how to hold the bat properly, much less hit a ball. And so as he stepped up to the plate, the pitcher from the other team, the pitcher moved a few steps forward, and he just tossed the ball lightly. And he didn't hit the ball. And he swung and he missed it. The pitcher again took a few more steps forward off the pitcher's mound, and he tossed the ball softly, and as the pitch came in, this young man swung and he hit the ball. A slow grounder. It went across it, and the pitcher, he could have picked up the ball and thrown it to the first baseman, and he would have been out, and that would have ended the game. But instead, the pitcher, you remember the pitcher, he's on the other team, right? This is the game, this is win or lose. The pitcher, instead, he picked up the ball, and he threw it in a high arc to the right field beyond the reach of the first baseman. Now his whole team started yelling, Shay, run to first, run to first. Well, he had never in his life, so he couldn't even run very fast. He had a bit, and so he ran down the baseline. He was so excited, and they were yelling at him, run to first. Well, then out in the outfield, they got the ball, and he said, okay, you know what? He could have thrown it to second base, but the outfielder, instead of throwing it to second base, threw it past, and so now they were saying, run to second, run to second. By the time he was going around the first base, the right fielder had the ball. He could have thrown it and tagged them, but they were saying, no, it's okay. So he threw the ball high and far over the third baseman's head. Shea ran towards second base as the other runners were running home. And then as he got to second base, this shortstop for the other team, he turned him in the direction of third base and said, run, keep running, run to third, run to third. So as he ran to third, the boys from both teams, they were screaming, Shea, run home, run home. And they called him, told him, run, keep on running. So he ran to home plate, and both teams started cheering. They jumped up and they were like, yes, They didn't care about the competition at that moment. They didn't care about winning or losing. They put aside their own desire. They set aside their competition to want to win. And they were excited that one young boy who'd always been left out, who were never chosen for the team, who didn't have the ability to do it on his own, but as two teams together came together, this young boy made a home run, and his father was telling this story to a group of people. And he said, that was a few years ago, and every day he says, remember when I got a home run, Dad? Remember when I got a home run? And his father, who is a Christian, said, that day I saw the greatest commandment in action by a bunch of 12 and 13-year-old boys. Love the Lord your God. He said, I don't know where they were with God, but they loved their neighbor as themselves. They put his wants and his desires and his dream not to play professional baseball, his dream not to win some kind of medal but just to be in the game. They put his dream above their competition that day. They could have said no and gone on with their game. They could have said, no, don't go to bat, and it would have been just enough. Because they let him stand in the outfield. They could have done that, but all the boys got on board. They said, no, let's prefer one young man with a disability over ourselves. Wow. As I read this, I got to be honest, tears came strolling down my face. These are 12 and 13-year-old boys who by nature are known to be kind of selfish. A true story. And for years, he remembered. Remember that day, Dad, when I made a home run? Wow. Putting aside our own desires. This is loving your neighbor as yourself. I don't know exactly how we will have the opportunity in the days to come, but we will. We will have the opportunity. Let's be like this incredible team of boys. Let's be like this pitcher, like this first baseman and shortstop. Let's prefer others before ourselves. Let's put them ahead of ourselves. Let's put their dreams and their desires, make a difference in somebody's life. These things, this is priority right here. First things first. First things first. Love God and love others. Practical. This is really saying we're going to make love a habit. Preferring others. Having a heightened awareness of others around us. You know, I've discovered this in my life, that often sandpaper people have gone through, or maybe are going through, difficult experiences. And sometimes it's good for us just to say, okay, I'm going to just look past that, and I'm going to realize that there's something deeper happening here. I recognize that, you know what, and on the flip side, on the benefit to me, hey, I'm being refined too. So this is a good thing. Loving others is equally as important as loving God. Preferring others. We prefer others by the words we speak and our love in action. Love is a choice. That's why it's, love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, we hear the story of the Good Samaritan. Completely different. Actually, people didn't really even get along. Culturally, they didn't get along. But one preferred the other above himself. Putting others, because love is about a choice. It's about choosing to act in preference to that other person. It's about those habits that we make every day. You said, why were you telling us that you're, trying to be nicer when you're driving? Because these are habits that I recognize that I have to make every day in my life. Little habits. If I get into little habits of always being right, always being first, don't cut me off, then I don't realize it, but in some way I've made a habit of not preferring people before myself. And so really just in little ways every day, I feel like, this year God is working on me to say, work on this, find ways to love others, prefer them first, forgive, releasing these things. It's a choice. It requires habit. It requires little steps every day that we make. So I want to close in a very different way today. I want to do something very unique. You want me to tell you to close your eyes and bow your heads, and I'm going to just pray that God helps you to love him more. But I'm not going to do that today. I'll pray that God helps you, but helps me. Oh, Jesus. You pray for me. But I want to do something very different. In just a moment, we're going to stand across this place. And we are going to get out of our seats. You say, we already did this at Formers of Friendship. No, we're going to do something completely different. If you're a guest here, this is your first time, or you're relatively new to the family of Harvest, then I don't want you to feel pressure. If you came with somebody, then just do this with the person that you came with. But everybody else who are part of the family, I want you to get out of your seat and go to somebody that maybe you're not real close with, somebody that they're not your best friend, or they're not your family member. And I want you just to speak one sentence of encouragement, not 20 minutes. One sentence of encouragement. And I want you to find 3 different people and encourage them. And then in just a few minutes, I'll invite you to come back to your seats. We have a few more things to do, because it's about putting love in action. This is a good step to make, a habit to start to create. That every time I come here, I'm speaking a word of encouragement. I'm telling somebody something that I appreciate. Don't make it all